Good morning, and I suppose good afternoon. We're midday here in the UK, and welcome to another episode of Cloud with Chris. You are with me, Chris Reddington. Here we talk all things cloud, and this is our monthly tech roundup. So grab a drink, grab some snacks, just chill out because we're just going to be running through similar things that have happened in February. So just going to keep you up to date, help you know what's going on, and I'll point out anything that I think is particularly interesting. Of course, normally I do that from the developer kind of angle, the architecture kind of angle, anything notable in Azure, GitHub, Azure DevOps, and I'll also talk about some of the things I've been working on at Cloud with Chris as well. And I guess, as usual, interaction is excellent. So if you do want to get in the chat and say hello, please do. Always great to have that interaction, seeing who's tuning in and listening, and I can make sure I can direct all of the content in the way that makes sense for you as well. So there's nothing like going live and at the same time putting out a production release of a website either, is there? I'm just rolling out some tweaks and updates for Cloud with Chris at the moment. That's what I've been working on this morning, hence going a little bit later than the normal usual 11 a.m, but keeps things interesting, I suppose, doesn't it? So let's go ahead and just bring up the screen share, because we're going to go ahead and do our normal thing. We will take a look at the Azure blogs, the Azure updates, the Azure DevOps blogs, the GitHub blogs, GitHub changelog, and the Cloud with Chris content as well. We'll also look at a few other things that have gone on this month with Community Day here in the UK, as well as our first episode of Lunch Bites, which is awesome. It's been a very busy month, actually, looking back on it. So we'll see how long this one goes on. So, of course, before we jump into anything, there is a lot happening in the world right now, and there's a lot of unrest, of course. There's very terrible things happening in Ukraine at the moment with Russia, and just want to say my thoughts and prayers are with everyone in Ukraine as well, because I just can't even imagine what everyone there is feeling. The fact that you can't even be safe in your own home, the fact you can't be safe in your own country. So thoughts, of course, with everyone over there, and I hope that this comes to some form of resolution quickly in a way that doesn't damage as much life as it potentially could, because of course it's a very dangerous situation. So thoughts with everyone over in Ukraine there as well. So let's go ahead, jump into the Azure blog first off here. So there are a few updates this month. The intersection of edge computing, telecommunication networks, and the cloud. So continuing that theme of telecoms, etc., that we've seen a few times here before on the blog. Azure cost management and billing updates. There's a roundup there for January. Of course, that's something I really like about the cost management and billing team. They do those monthly kind of roundup blog posts to keep you up to date. So that's something nice there. Excuse me. Improve your security defenses for ransomware attacks with Azure Firewall. I think everyone is, of course, particularly in the world we're in right now, very conscious of their security posture. And then announcing the public preview of Microsoft Azure Payment HSM service. This one is quite interesting. I haven't looked into this at all yet, but given there's a lot of challenges, let's say, when you start dealing with finances and dealing with payments and transactions, etc., in any kind of technical system. So it looks like this is a step to making this an easier thing to do in the cloud, and particularly in Azure. Here we go. It meets stringent security audit compliance, low latency, high performance requirements by the payment card industry, PCI. So very, very interesting one there. If you have that requirement, for example, for cards and mobile payment authorization, PIN, cryptogram validation, all of these types of scenarios that you would expect as part of processing transactions and payments there. So just a good one to be aware of, really, I guess, if you are in that space and influencing those kind of scenarios. It is in preview right now, East US and North Europe, but again, that could be something useful if that's the type of work you focus on. So let's jump across here to the first page of the blog, and here we go. So let's just jump down all the way to the bottom and see what's going on as well. IoT adoption remains strong in Asia Pacific. That's quite interesting to know. Genomic analysis on Galaxy using Azure Cycle Cloud. I suspect Galaxy is some kind of offering or platform rather than the Galaxy. Learn how open source plays a key role in Microsoft's cloud strategy. That is actually an interesting one we'll jump into here. There was an event earlier this month effectively around open source and how Microsoft has approached open source internally. Azure Open Source Day, here we go. It was on February the 15th. It is available on demand to watch as well. So yeah, great to see that. Next up, migrating your Azure files has never been easier. I think there were some announcements, if I remember rightly, around making it easier to even do backups and multiple backups as well, but that might be slightly separate to this post here. But again, making that an easier experience. Azure VM availability monitoring with Project Flash. Microsoft Azure's first Azure HPC and AI Day. Managing Linux anywhere with Azure Hybrid Benefits and Red Hat Ansible automation platform on Azure. Azure Spring Cloud Enterprise is in preview. Observability from cloud to edge in Azure. This one looks quite interesting. Let's jump in and take a look. So it's talking here about Azure Monitor, App Insights, Network Insights, some of the investments happening in open telemetry there as well. And I suspect, yeah, there we go, talking about some of the integrations with open source there, how's GDPR compliance, etc., etc. So again, all great pieces there. But ultimately, here we go. We can see here that really the focus is about Azure Arc, which again, great approach, great framework, and I'm a big fan of Azure Arc actually. And seamless integration of logs.io observability platform with Microsoft Azure. I know that was quite a whistle-stop tour, that one, because the more granular updates are in the Azure updates section. So go ahead and take a look at that instead. So we've talked about the fact Azure Payment HSM service is in public preview. Azure Monitor diagnostic settings for Azure Storage is GA. Azure Monitor logs connector on exact time range is public preview there. Azure PostgreSQL backup with long-term retention. That is up to 10 years, so that's quite interesting. Test action groups in Azure Monitor. This is nice, actually. And I'd never really thought about this or appreciated it before, that there wasn't a nice, easy way to test those action groups in Azure Monitor previously. So nice to see that in public preview. Great to see that. Azure Monitor Agents extension support for automatic upgrade. That is now available for extensions in generally available state. So good news there. Improved Syslog RFC compliance using the new Azure Monitor Agent. So again, get updating. Azure IoT Edge for Linux on Windows updates, and Azure Monitor diagnostic settings for Azure Storage. I believe, I guess there's a slight difference here between these two. So that supports Azure Storage logs in Log Analytics Workspace, Azure Event Hubs, Azure Storage, and select Marketplace partners. Maybe there's just a duplication there by the looks of it. But let's jump then to the next page here. And of course, this is going to be a bit longer than our previous update, because in January, I guess you got people coming back from the holidays. It's a little bit quieter. Whereas, of course, now in February, people at the teams, the engineering teams, are going to be working on a lot of these features and releasing a lot of these aspects as well. So a feature I'm really happy to see actually for Azure Container Apps is the custom virtual network support. So effectively being able to inject into your own virtual network in public preview. Great to see that. Generally available PowerShell on Linux OS in Azure Functions. Azure Cache for Redis, active geo-replication in enterprise tiers. Azure SQL updates for early February 2022. Let's just jump into that. Azure Key Vault managed hardware security module support for transparent data encryption. Bring your own key in Azure SQL database and Azure SQL managed instance. Translating my 3-letter acronyms on the fly there. Always good fun. Deployment enhancements for SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machines, automated backup enhancements for SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machines. So I guess the extension that you install with Azure SQL on VMs has had a bit of love there by the looks of it. Enhanced storage configuration with TempDB. Azure Database for PostgreSQL, Hyperscale Citus supports PostgreSQL minor versions. PostgreSQL, Hyperscale Citus new certifications. PostgreSQL Hyperscale Citus private access support. Public preview anomaly detector adds synchronous multivariate detection and improved anomaly interpretation. So I guess looking at multiple features or parameters as part of those machine learning models that could go ahead and impact your anomalies, let's say there. So that's particularly interesting. Azure Sphere OS 22.01 release is cancelled. The next release will be 22.02. IoT Edge monitoring with Azure Monitor, always good. Seeing that centralized view of monitoring going on there. Azure Communication Services telephony capabilities in Denmark and the UK. So customers in Denmark and the UK can now purchase toll-free and geographic phone numbers. Interesting. New enhancements and updates released for general availability in Microsoft Defender for Cloud in January 2022. So there's a few things in here. Microsoft Defender for Resource Manager updated with new alerts and greater emphasis on high-risk operations mapped to the MITRE attack matrix. Deprecated the recommendation to classify sensitive data in SQL databases. Communication with suspicious domain alert expanded to include known log4shell related domains. Copy alert JSON button added to security alert details panes. Renamed 2 recommendations. Deprecate Kubernetes cluster containers. Added active alerts workbook and system update recommendation added to government cloud. And several public preview updates as well. We'll jump into those and take a quick glance. Recommendations to enable Microsoft Defender plans on workspaces and auto provision log analytics agents to Azure Arc enabled machines. That's pretty cool, actually. I like that one. Okay, generally available Azure IoT Edge supports Ubuntu Server 2004 and ARM64. Okay, ARM64 support. That's great to see. Private preview AKS cluster persistent volume backup. That again is in private preview. Generally available regional deployments for all new and existing IoT central applications. And going on to page 2 here as we scroll down. Right, so generally available recovery points extended to 15 days with Azure Site Recovery. Great. Azure Site Recovery update rollup 60, which is January 2022's update. They've added new distros to Linux OS support for Azure to Azure and VMware physical to Azure replications. Added support for Windows Server 2022 for Hyper-V to Azure replications. Now, retention points are available up to 15 days, we just mentioned. Replication can be enabled on Azure VMs via Azure Policy, nice. And ZRS managed disks can be used when replicating Azure virtual machines. That's pretty cool as well. If you have some of those high availability requirements across different zones, particularly interesting. Public preview, Azure Bastion now supports file transfer via the native client, which is quite nice there. I guess that's the whole kind of drag and drop experience, being able to copy files. Generally available search results page improvements in Azure IoT Central. Generally available improved getting started material in Azure IoT Central docs. Find developer resources easily with IoT Central GitHub repository. OCR supports 164 languages in the Cognitive Services Computer Vision. New languages including Arabic, Hindi, and other regional languages with the same writing scripts. Also extends handwritten OCR support for Japanese and Korean, along with enhancements for handwritten data names and amounts and general performance and AI quality enhancements. Okay. Azure Sphere version 2202 is expected on Feb 28th, so that should be tomorrow. Azure Tag Support in AKS, you can now specify a tag, create or update of AKS cluster to track resource usage. That is a big one. Really, really pleased to see that, actually. Let's go and take a look, because that will help with things like chargebacks, for example. So if we just scroll down here, there we go. So you can add the tags to node pools. You can add tags using Kubernetes there as well. Azure tags to public IPs, disks, and files using a Kubernetes manifest. So really still those Azure resources rather than the aspect inside of the cluster, but it's a step in the right direction. That's really good to see. So you can do that on the node pool level, the resource group, and each virtual machine scale set instance associated with the node pool as well. Good to see that. Now available CIS benchmarks for Kubernetes, generally available hot patch for Windows Server and virtual machines. Public preview of Kubernetes version 1.23 support is available in AKS. Azure Monitor predictive autoscale for Azure virtual machine scale sets. That is an interesting one, actually. Public preview app service environment v3 migration feature. So I suspect that is going to be migrating to v3. Using the new migration feature to move from internal load balancer and external configurations in App Service v2 in any regions there. During the migration process, App Service plans are automatically updated to isolated v2. Okay, generally available alert processing rules in Azure Monitor, and generally available developer portal widget for embedding custom HTML code. I believe that one is an API management one. Yes, it is indeed. What else have we got here? Azure Tables extension for Azure Functions public preview has been updated now in its own NuGet package. So you can now connect to Cosmos DB Tables API, connect to storage tables using identity-based connections. That, of course, came for a number of the other extensions. So the queues, for example, service bus, etc. You can connect via identities, managed identities rather than connection strings. So that's now come to Azure Tables as well. Nice to see. Generally available virtual machine level disk bursting supports additional VM types. Again, great to see features being expanded. So supports M series, MSV2 series medium memory, and MD-SV2 series medium memory families. Okay. Azure Database PostgreSQL Hyperscale Citus additional regions are available. So now available in Central US, South Central US, West Central US, and West US regions. And new certifications again there as well. And then as we go to our final page of updates here, Azure Machine Learning February 2022 announcements, public preview, model transparency and trust for full control, and customization of models training code, support scenarios that require model training code deployed in production, as well as control and customization of the code. New learning content on the Azure IoT Central homepage, automatically delete a VM and its associated resources simultaneously. The reason I smile at that one is I've seen a lot of love for that over social media, over on LinkedIn, over on Twitter, and various places. So again, that's a great one to see. In development, price sheet download as a zip file, so useful in a small business environment. Cross-region virtual machine restore points. Resource configuration changes. This one's quite interesting, actually. I'll jump into this one. I had a quick glance at it the other day. So one of the things that is coming out of Azure Resource Graph, and it's not scaling as you would expect it to, these kind of things. There we go, let's just bring that back up. It looks like we had a bit of a blip. What this allows you to do is query when those changes have happened, so you can sort of start seeing the deltas and correlate that with when you were starting to see issues. So that's a great tool for you to understand what changed when, so then you can eliminate any infrastructure changes there as part of the problem. Generally available, localization available in Azure Purview. Application Gateway Mutual Authentication is generally available. Great to see that. I've had a few people asking about that, so very, very good to see that one. Public Preview Cost Management Anomaly Detection for subscriptions. New capabilities for Azure Monitor Logs, customer retention for Azure Activity and Usage data tables, Log Analytics data export in Azure Monitor, Direct Enterprise Agreement on Azure Cost Management and Billing. This one's a big one. Public Preview WordPress enhancements for App Service. Again, I've heard that one come up as a request a few times, so great to see that. Public Preview Azure NetApp Files Application Consistent Snapshot Tool v5.1 is in Public Preview. NetApp Files New Region and Cross-Region Replication is generally available. Public Preview Elastic and Azure Spring Cloud Integration. Public Preview Azure Spring Cloud Enterprise, as we mentioned earlier. Utilize multiple backups per day for Azure Files and Azure Backup, generally available. That is what I mentioned earlier. Great to see that. And you can now actually configure that via backup policy there. And updated navigation menu in Azure IoT Central. So, plenty of information there to keep you going. So, let's go ahead and move across now to the Azure DevOps blog here. Lots of good updates. We won't dig into all of the community updates this time, just being very conscious of time and keeping us moving. But there's, of course, that weekly update from Jay Gordon and team, which is brilliant. Copy Dashboard Public Preview Part 3, Dan Hellam made a post about that. So now you have some additional things that you can do there, like copying dashboard queries, etc. Good to see that functionality is coming in there as well. New with Azure Cosmos DB, with Jay Gordon, Gal Levy, and Theo Van Cray. More top stories from the DevOps community. Good friend and colleague April Edwards has a new episode of DevOps Lab here, and it's with Kat Cosgrove and Matty Stratton from Pulumi, talking about deploying to Azure using Pulumi Actions. More community posts. Another update from Jay Gordon on Azure Fun Bites, progressive delivery with split software and Azure DevOps. And finally, a post from April on the latest community updates. And some of the folks from the community that have posted some interesting pieces there. There we go. Right, on to GitHub. In terms of what's new on GitHub, we'll probably focus more on the changelog side of things, but we'll just have a quick scroll down the main page just in case anything jumps out. One of the big ones actually is you can now have pre-built code spaces. It's entering public beta, which is great to see. So right now, the way the code spaces typically works is you have your doc file, builds it on the fly, and then you have your environment running. But of course, depending on how big that environment is, the build time needed for the Docker image, etc., that could take quite a long time. So now there's the ability to have these pre-built environments, which is great to see. Leveraging machine learning to find security vulnerabilities, always interesting from an engineering perspective. And then Martin Woodward posted an update here about being able to include diagrams in your Markdown files with Mermaid, which is, again, awesome. I need to think of how I can do that with some of my own projects. I've got ideas there, actually. Interesting. And then several new updated posts here. New way to understand your GitHub hosted runner capacity from Ben to St. Pegoch there. I think it might be the same Ben. Yeah, I didn't realize Ben was a GitHub. Cool. That's good to know. What else have we got? Code scanning finds more vulnerabilities using machine learning. How to make the most out of a mentoring relationship. That's quite a nice one. Encoding and escaping untrusted data to prevent injection attacks. Some more of those posts that we've seen there already. The release radar for generating the open source pieces that were out. And then a few more interesting updates here from a product perspective. GitHub Enterprise Server 3.4, for example. Getting started with project planning on GitHub, etc. etc. So lots of great updates there. Now, let's focus more on the changelog side of things, because there is a ton of updates on GitHub from the changelog side. So self-hosted runners can now disable automatic updates. The new GitHub issues, there was a February the 2nd update, which gave project descriptions, as well as flexible iterations, and the insights filter as well, being able to apply filters directly on your insights report. That insights is in alpha at the moment, so it's not available for everyone right now. Okay. Sponsors only repositories. So if you're working on some kind of open source project, or some project where actually you're looking for sponsors for that, and you want to make that exclusive to your sponsors, that is now available, which is quite nice actually. Maybe from a support perspective, or organizations being able to fund and have that kind of more exclusive community. I think it brings some interesting options there. The GitHub settings pages have been redesigned and they're all nice and clean. You can paste links directly into Markdown. Dependabot alert permissions can now be configured as part of custom repository roles. There are more ways to keep your pull request branch up to date. Customizing command palette keyboards, shortcuts beta. You can reference labels in Markdown, which is quite nice, I thought. And I like how they have these GIFs as well for the different features they're showing. I appreciate that. Code scanning organization level REST API. Image previews now shown by default when comparing differences, which is, again, just a nice quality of life feature there. And if we scroll down, light high contrast theme is now in GA. View Dependabot alerts across an organization. Dependabot alerts persisted after fix, now 1 per advisory. Discussions support in the GitHub app for Microsoft Teams and Slack. So if you're into that whole chat op side of things, you'll be pleased to see that. Gist comments are now paginated. Gist now supports alternative default branch names. Legacy delete reactions REST API removed. Secret scanning dry runs for repository level custom pattern. Big fan of that one actually. The ability to be able to do a dry run and just detect what may be in there already as an example before you kind of publish that pattern is nice, rather than having to commit that change and then go, oh, okay, haven't quite got the rule right, let me try again. So helps with that process. Upload images to wiki pages. Codespaces now automatically creates more user-friendly names. Dependabot alerts, access state fixed alerts, and numeric identifier via GraphQL API. Secret scanning now supports archived repositories. GitHub Enterprise Server 3.4 release candidate is available. Code owners improvements, syntax errors, preview will be requested, and more. Again, big fan of that, because code owners is just one of these great features that is available to be able to bring that quality, ensure certain reviews are in place, and really protect the quality of your code there. So great to see that. Mentioned support for the GitHub app in Microsoft Teams and Slack. Again, in terms of being able to get those notifications and really speed up that review process, there's been some great updates here for Microsoft Teams and Slack. So big fan. I might dig into that because I'm really curious how that works. If it's just based upon, it looks like it's based upon the user there. So how the mapping happens between the user and the either Teams or the Slack user. So I need to take a look into that. Discover code scanning partner integrations on the GitHub Actions tab. Sunset notice, deprecated Teams API endpoints. New GitHub issues, February the 23rd update, so that's only a few days ago. There is a new filter syntax, so you can look at items which are assigned to you, for example, or issues, I should say. You can use the @next and @previous or the @current. And then there's some number of date type fields. Now they support a number of different pieces here, so more than or equal, more or equals, less than or equals, n to star to n, and then n to n as well. Iteration breaks, so like if everyone was off for the festive period, for example. And chart filters and persistent charts as well. You can now save and name these filtered charts to share them with your team, just like you can with views. So that is a nice feature update there as well. Code Spaces pre-built, now available in public beta, as we just mentioned earlier, and code scanning detects more security issues, supports new language versions as well. Great to see. Now, of course, this was the week where we did our first episode of Lunch Bites. So Lunch Bites is something that I've been working on for a little while now, and I'm really glad to see it finally released and launched to the world. So this is where Steph, myself, Steph, myself are the hosts of the show. We've got Adam Jackson working in the background, helping us produce that. And then we have Matt Fatunka as our first guest, actually, on this particular show. We'll be doing that every 2 weeks, and it's going to be streamed, or it is streamed, I should say, on Learn TV. So it should be available on demand very soon on Learn TV, and we'll be getting updates out on the upcoming Lunch Bites very soon, which will be on March the 9th. So if you're interested in DevOps and Logic apps, take a look on March 9th, because you will see a great session coming up there. So I won't reveal any more, but stay tuned for that one. And there was one more thing, but it looks like I closed the tab for that one, unfortunately. But there was the Azure Community Day here as well in the UK. Adam Jackson, Steph Rogers hosted that one. Brilliant day. Loads of great insights from some of the big names we see in the local technical community. Great to see really the theme of how tech communities can help people grow and develop and move on to bigger and brighter things. And I think Shabazz, for example, was one of the great stories there about how he started speaking at a particular user group and then became one of the co-organizers of that. And just about that experience really emphasizes what's passionate about these meetup groups and seeing the opportunities for people to develop and grow. Something I'm super passionate about. So I'm really happy to see that and keep hearing these stories. So great day. Recommend you get out, especially if you're a meetup group organizer, because the Welsh Azure user group also did a great talk about the hybrid event that they ran back in September as now. And again, great session, great insights. I think there's a lot for us to learn there from the folks there, who are always a shining beacon, a shining of how to run some meetup groups. Now, Cloud with Chris. I'm just going to switch the view here so you got a better view of the screen. Maybe we'll just zoom in ever so slightly as well. There we go. So there's been some updates to Cloud with Chris. I've talked about the fact that I was doing some layout changes, etc. before, and they're now pretty stable and pretty set. But I've been doing a lot of work to optimize the theme, the design, images loading, because you'll notice this new version is very image heavy, of course. So these banners originally I created in 1920 by 1080. Of course, if you're viewing that on a mobile, that's going to hammer your download size there and your bandwidth you have. So not ideal. So I've been doing a lot of work with Hugo in terms of being able to go and resize these images on the fly using some of the Hugo pipeline capabilities. And then a number of other things like SEO optimization once again, load times, looking at that, looking at how images shift along the page, etc. And all of these different things from like resizing to do with the shifting of the page and the what's the word I'm looking for here? The kind of fluid nature, I guess, in terms of the site. But that aside, that is also not not the limit of what I've been doing on Cloud with Chris as well. I have noticed a bug here, actually. This is why you don't do production releases as you go live, of course. I need to go and fix why the data is not rendering this, so that'll be a simple and easy fix. I know exactly what that will be. However, it really saw me starting again with the content creation side of things. So we kicked off in February, I should say, with the community gaming. We played a bit of Halo Infinite, and we will have some gaming coming up this week. It's due to be Among Us, but depending on numbers, we might change gears and shift to something else. So if you do want to join us, take a look at the Discord channel at the top of Cloud with Chris. Come and join the Discord server, and you can get set up and come and join us for some gaming. But I've done a few blog posts, actually. I've really enjoyed some of these blog posts this month. So one of them was about automating adding GitHub issues to GitHub projects beta. So I gave some kind of code samples of how to do that, some screenshots of what that looks like as well. And then overall, kind of document that process and that flow. Had some great feedback from the community there, which actually led to me writing a second post here. So a big thank you to Tom Cookove, who gave me the feedback, who is the maintainer of the Prometheus and Cada open source projects. So originally the first blog post that I wrote was more focused on automating that with GitHub organizations. So I wrote another one about how to do that for a user specifically. So projects under a user account rather than an organization. So if you're interested in that, go and check that out. I documented some of my tips and tricks as well on how I used regex and VS Code to find and replace certain patterns inside of my markdown files. So how I referenced images, any of those images that don't have captions, I wanted to be able to replace them with those that had captions. So I talk about how I went and did that really simply using find and replace with regex. Tool Up Tuesday we kicked off this month, which has been super fun. Really enjoying that one, and big thank you to Matt for kind of jumping in with that as well. It's been a lot of fun. We were originally going to do it as a once a month thing, but we both agreed very quickly actually we would like to do it more than once a month, so we're going to be doing it every couple of weeks now. So we did one last week, which we'll come to in a moment, but yeah, we're building a game called Spacebar, or Spacebars I should say, and it's really just a art of the possible. We'll see what happens, and we just want to showcase our thought process as we go and build things, as we go and architect things. So I'm really pleased actually where we've got so far. We've got the basis of an idea of a design when we had no real ideas to start off with. And Matt did a great job in the last session at pulling together our data models and all of those pieces. So now we're going to be looking at some of that game engine piece and how we go and build that. We talked about the GitHub issues to projects beta for a repository owned by a user. And then I had my first guest back onto the show in quite a while. We had Chris Ayres talking to us about feature flags and the art of the if and deployment. And it really is an art, because it was a great discussion. If you're new to feature flags or you're curious about feature flags, definitely take a look at that post, because there's a lot of interesting insights to learn in that video. Then another post which actually got a lot of traction with the technical community, lots of people interested in this one, was using GitHub Actions and OpenID Connect to deploy static web apps to Azure. So GitHub recently released this capability of being able to authenticate to cloud providers using OpenID Connect. And obviously cloud provider has to support that as well. There has to be that kind of two-way trust almost. So I've written a blog post about how to kind of get that configured and set up and use that with the Azure login GitHub action. But my thoughts overall with the static web app side of things are it works, definitely possible. But ultimately, take a look at the blog post because there are quite a few gotchas because of the fact that you need to use this static web apps token to deploy to the web app right now. You can't just use the permissions of that identity that you're using, unfortunately. And what that means is you then have to figure out how to bring the token into the workflow. You have to mask the token. And there are quite a few areas you could trip up and potentially expose that token as a result, which is why I put a lot of warnings and kind of disclaimers in that post to say, be careful about doing this. This is more of an art of the possible and showing you that this is possible. Certainly with resources where you can manage them through managed identity and permissions, or that identity, I should say, and permissions, go for it. That would be a great way to get going. But because you still have to use that token to deploy, it feels like there's still just one potential hoop there that you need to jump over. So stay tuned on that one, is what I would say. But again, it was a fun post to write up. Really enjoyed that one. Tool Up Tuesday happened earlier this week, as I mentioned. So Matt and I went live. Matt did a great job at building the data model and pulling that together. He really drove that session for us this time around. And we'll be going live again in, I guess, a week and a bit. And in terms of what is coming up, of course, you're listening right now to the February Cloud Tech Roundup. So hello, and thank you so much for joining. This week we have community gaming. We're going to be playing Among Us. And of course, would love to have you all involved. So take a look at the post if you want to come and join. There was a link somewhere. Maybe I got rid of that actually. There we go. It's in the series level here. Come and jump onto the Cloud Chris Discord channel here. But of course, it's in that top banner. Along with that then, later this week, I'll be going live with Johnny Huibergs as well, where we go and talk about Azure Quantum and Microsoft Q#. So I'm really looking forward to that one because I know nothing about Azure Quantum and nothing about Microsoft Q#. And quite frankly, nothing about quantum computing or quantum in general. So that's going to be a real learning session for me. I'm really, really excited for that one, actually. So lots of great stuff going on there. A couple of other things just to highlight here. In terms of talks, I am doing meetup group talks once again. I'm now back at that stage. I've got a few in the process of being scheduled. So a couple which look like the kind of April, May timeframes. I think one potentially in March as well. But if you want me to come along and speak at one of your meetup groups, please drop me a message. I'm always happy to go and do that. I have got a bit of a portfolio of talks that I can go and deliver, and I'm working on expanding those over time as well. But on that point, something that I did do previously was I put my presentations up on GitHub so that people could go and take a look at. But they're not the most discoverable. They're not the most easy to kind of review because they're binary files. You have to download it, you then have to open it up using PowerPoint or PDF reader or whatever it may be. So something I've been exploring is how I can go and make my presentations available through Cloud with Chris a bit more easily. So you'll see that I've now got this drop down. Instead of talks being available in that main banner, we've got talks and presentations. And what you'll see here is now a link to two presentations. So what I've got is I've got a separate website, presentations.cloudwithchris.com, where I'm hosting my presentations. And I've looked through a few different open source projects. I looked through MARP, for example. I looked at reveal.js, and they've all got their pros, they've all got their cons. And eventually what I ended up on was reveal.js, but actually using a Hugo theme. So there is a Hugo theme called Hugo Reveal, And it does use an outdated version of reveal.js, so I have put in a pull request to get that updated and make those changes, which is the version I'm using on my own presentations.cardwithchris subdomain there. But what you'll see when I click on this link, and there is a rendering issue here, I need to go and fix that image, but you'll see that this just looks like any other presentation. I can go ahead and skip through my different pages here, my different slides. You can see that I can go and pinpoint on the different lines of code that I want you to focus on as I'm going through the presentation as well. So I'm really trying to do what I can to make sure that my content is out there, accessible and available for people to learn from. And better yet, all of the slide notes, etc. If I just press the S button, you can see that I can go and get my slide notes there as well. So it's a very kind of PowerPoint or Keynote or OpenOffice-like experience, but directly from the browser. So I'm still using Hugo to generate all of that, just a separate deployment. So that is running on an Azure Static Web App. It's behind Azure Front Door, just like my other, my main site. In fact, here's the architecture. So it's just the same as what you would expect to see with my main website. So maybe I'll do a talk on that at some point, but just wanted to share that because I will be converting my presentations into this kind of format so that they can be available up and out there for everyone to see. And with that, that is really what I wanted to cover today. There is going to be lots of interesting stuff coming up in March, by no least the fact it's a big milestone and a big celebration for me. I've got a big birthday coming up in March in the next kind of week and a half or so. So that's going to be fun and exciting and lots of celebrating to be had, entering a new decade. But overall, going to be carrying on with the content and publishing that over the month. So as always, if there's something you want to go and see, please do shout. Please do let me know, because that's really how I try and build up my backlog, is what you as the community want. So if there is anything you'd like to see, if there are particular blog posts that have been useful, please let me know. Because I am really keeping an eye on that analytics and that telemetry kind of data as well, just to understand what you're all looking at and maybe what content would resonate there as well. So as always, you've been with me, Chris Reddington, and I hope you stay safe and well and healthy. And until the next time, thank you so much for joining and tuning in today, and see you on the next one. Bye for now.